Welcome back to 30, Flirty, and Nerdy. Today I have Kelly Bennett here with me. She is a creative director and someone that is also a client of mine. And we've been following each other in this creative space for about how many years did we say? Like two? About two
Yeah,
now?
2
Yeah.
I think probably over 2 years, because you were
Yeah.
in my mentoring program when I first launched it, and that, I think, is almost 3 years ago when I first
Wow.
launched it. Yeah,
Yeah.
time
So
is
that's
flying.
it is. And that's how we connected was through your mentorship program. And you kind of helped me with my business from like the bare bones. And I kind
Mhm.
of got a little bit of what it is, who I'm working with, all that type of stuff. And so today, what I want to talk to you about for my podcast is all about how you started your creative direction business and like the people you work with and where you were when you were at 30 years old to where you are now. Because as I mentioned to you before, I find that through the 6 years, like I've only known you for 2 years, but for the 6 years of the time frame of being 30, it's like I see you as someone who's very successsul. So
Well,
I
thank you for
wanted
that. I really appreciate. Thank you.
you're
That's
welcome.
really kind of you.
Of
Yeah,
course. So I want to
a
kind of
lot has happened.
yeah, I want to talk to you about kind of like where you were at 30, your mindset shifts and limiting beliefs that you had or that you said before were kind of put on you and how you broke through those barriers. Because for people that are just turning 30, I know a lot of them are like, I'm 30, fuck the world, I'm being whoever I want to be. And like,
Yeah.
it's kind of a time where people start being who they are and kind of break down a lot of things that were cool to them in the past. Um,
Mhm.
that they didn't believe in themselves. And like for me, I feel I'm more out of my shell and kind of more mature and aware of things. And so, yeah, let's get started with that. A little bit,
Sounds good.
yeah. And a little bit of background about you is like I mentioned, you're a creative director. You work with many brands about building their business, about
Mhm.
ground zero to like social media, everything in between, product based businesses, service based business, like everything. And so, yeah, do you want to explain a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So thank you again. I appreciate you so much for saying that, and inviting me on. It's really funny that today we're recording this talking about 30, because I've been in this really reflective place. I'm 37. I turned 37 this year, and I really feel like I'm now really working on this new chapter that I've started for myself, being back in New York City for the last year, building my business in my life, my personal life too. I feel like I've turned the corner, and I'm now starting to really live my day to day in this new chapter, in this new season. And the chapter I'm closing really started when I was 30. So I've been journaling about this and meditating on this and like really getting into all the things. Like there was a new moon the other day, and I was like, wow, I'm really closing up this chapter. And the big milestone of this past chapter started at 30. So all of this is really fresh on my mind and on my heart. So thank you for inviting me on this conversation, because this is what I've been really processing a lot. Um, so to jump right into it, the big thing on the I'll start on the personal side too, because I feel like it's really hard to differentiate how you show up in business to how you show up in life. They're very, very interconnected. And so, a little background, I would say 30 was when I started to really feel like I was doing the work I was meant to do. Like you said, limiting beliefs. I had a lot of limiting beliefs put on me at a young age because I'm dyslexic. I have learning disorders. Um, was rejected from like every single college I applied to, and I was told like college was going to be too hard, and like being a business person was too hard and challenging. But I always felt in my heart that I was creative and that I was a business person, but maybe I had to decide if I was going to be creative or a business person. And I just got into the community college by my house that like let everybody in. And then I studied everything under the sun with business and creativity. I ended up studying for 6 years in university, studied abroad a few times, got 4 degrees, and set out to build brands and build brands that were creative and impactful and genuinely caring about people. And back then, people would stare at me and be like, "What the hell are you talking about? That was not the conversation in business." Now it's very common, which is awesome. But that was a 12-year journey. And again, bringing it back to the age of 30, that was when I was a creative director and partner in a restaurant. And it was the first time that someone genuinely believed in my skills. And I had already done a lot of the experimenting and legwork of figuring out what my craft was in creative direction. And it was the first time that I had full reins of like, do it. Like, do it, make this successful, do your thing. And that for me was life changing that I was able to have that creative freedom and do things that were wild that like no restaurant ever did, like we did some really innovative stuff and it ended up around 30, I want to say, it was around that time. Facebook called me and I spoke at a conference and they invited me to be a panelist on their small business conference when they came to Vegas, and just like different media hits and features and conversations and community gatherings, a lot of that was happening around 30. And behind the scenes, 30 was the year where I decided, I remember on my 30th birthday, like I was going to come out publicly. I have I had close friends who knew I was gay and, like, some colleagues who knew I was gay, but I wasn't publicly out and I wasn't out to my family. But 30 was that year that I was like, "Fuck it, I'm not hiding who I am, like, I'm gonna be fully my authentic self." And I ended up meeting someone, we dated for a while, it was, like, my first serious relationship, and I totally came out in all the ways. And that was when I turned 30. I went all in all the different areas of my life, and, it was hard, but it was so game changing, and like I said, I'm really turned the corner of that chapter of my life and starting this new chapter of my life and seeing what I want to bring with me. And I would say that drive to be my authentic self and to let go of any limiting beliefs of like, you have to decide between being a creative and being a business owner, or you have to fit this certain criteria to quote unquote be successful in business, or you have to fit into this certain box, or you can't be successful. I had a lot of limiting beliefs, like I said, put on me, but also I did have some. And 30 was the year that I really let a lot go. And then this inner work I've been doing recently was like closing that all up so I could really move forward on a very authentic and honest and truthful chapter. That was a long-winded and sent answer, but that's my hot take on turning 30.
I think that's amazing though. Like you said, you worked with this company that led you into many different avenues of like being a creative director. Like you got creative freedom, you had Facebook reach out to you, you did all these amazing things. And it's like that I find really set the foundation for what you're doing. And then, like you said too, you
It
came
did.
out at 30, which is amazing. And I'm sure that's able to give you more of a mindset of I could show more of who I am on the
Yes.
online world because on your Instagram, you show your day to day, you show your behind the scenes, you show
Oh,
like
yeah.
everything about what you're doing, which is so inspiring. And I'm sure people that see you want to be like, well, I want to be authentic as well. And kind of,
Mhm.
I'm sure you inspire people that way. So I think it's amazing how you 30 was like the beginning of your success.
Yeah,
And you feel like
I
jump started
absolutely.
everything.
Yeah, I would say it was a lot of, trying things, definitely being, feeling like, "Oh my god, is this ever gonna happen?" A lot of those days, but 30 was when things started to click. 30 was like, okay, cool. Like, I am a creative director. I was a partner in the business. That was the first time I was a partner in a thriving small business at that level. And so that for me was like validation on the creative side, validation on the business side, and also my personal life. Knowing that I could let go of these stories of thinking of like when I come out, like I'm going to lose everything and lose my family, and nothing like that happened. I'm very privileged in that way, because that's not everyone's story. So I just want to recognize that. I'm very, very grateful that I was safe enough to do that, and I worked with people who were cool and like family, but, um, that's not always the case for everyone. I'm very, very grateful, and that's why also I'm so passionate about sharing stuff now, hopefully to maybe give some courage or inspiration or just support to people who are trying to find their way to being their true self and to have their own business and having that independence and having that autonomy over their lives. That's really, really freeing. And so I do like to share a lot about the behind the scenes and create community, because that is that was literally changed my life, and I want to make sure I'm sharing that to more people.
That's awesome. And I guess that's another question I had too, like with community. I know a lot of people have a hard time meeting people, making friends with people when they're 30. There's like
Yeah.
that stigma because you're not in school anymore. You know, some people
Yeah.
are at work, some people are busy doing other things and being with family, and they don't have time to make friends. So, how did you create your community? How did you create your friends that weren't necessarily business related, but maybe they were business related and turned friends? So, how did you like do the networking at this stage of your life?
That's a really good question, something that I've been revisiting actually, because this past year it was interesting coming back to New York. There was definitely a shift in friendships, and it was like the most surprising shift out of all the things. I wasn't expecting that. I've had to make shifts with boundaries and people and all those things. So that's a good question. I've been really thinking about that myself. What I would say though, at 30 and people that I see uh, are like my forever people are people that are very much like-minded. We're into similar things, people I've been able to create with, people that we kind of had an understanding of what we both were bringing to the table. And for me, I really like friends who I could create with. Like, that's just my thing. That's how I like to spend time with people. I don't get me wrong, I like to just go out and have fun, but for the most part, like, I enjoy that. Like, that brings me happiness. So, that is when I started really collaborating with people and creating things with people. And the person who keeps standing out is Ashley Ayala, who back then she had Sister House Collective. Um and then we started the workshop downtown together. We hosted local creatives meetup. Her best friend, Jessie Sells, moved back to Vegas, and the three of us worked on things together. And that for me was really cool, of meeting friends and making friends in your 30s. Because I'll be honest, I'm very shy. I'm very introverted. Actually, making friends is not something that comes easy to me, because I don't really go out and like, I've just kinda stayed to myself, but having that space to be creative and also bringing creative people together, the local creatives meetup, we did that for about 4 years, and they were super successful. I made friends there, people made friends there, so I think for me and what I've seen is the more that you could just show up and be in spaces of like-minded people, and even if it's a little awkward, just still showing up anyways. That was very much an ethos of the local creatives meetups. And I could just say from my own personal experience, just showing up, reaching out, maybe asking someone for coffee, or even today I met with someone over Zoom who has a similar business, and we were talking and connecting, and like I could possibly hire her sister to do photos for me. And like I think it's just kind of getting out of your own way at times, but also doing things that you're actually passionate about or curious about because you tend to maybe be a little bit more open in those spaces. And also being realistic that you're probably going to need time to recharge if you're an introvert like myself. So don't put pressure on yourself that you have to be so social all the time and going out all the time because that could very easily burn you out. And I absolutely did that too. So I think it's just like listening to what works for you. I one time got really shitty advice from someone I really looked up to because she told me I had to go out all the time in order to network and make friends. And I remember like literally crying after this mentor session that I paid for because I was like, shit, like that's just not my vibe. And for me to then like counter that and then create space for people who wanted to show up on a Monday morning and drink coffee together and connect, like that for me was a really cool moment of being like, you don't have to do it the way that you were told you had to. You could do it in a way that works for you. Um, so that was a big game changer. And even recently, realizing that again, the like-minded friends who I've been creative with are the friends that I've been able to sustain and nurture that relationship.
That's amazing. I love that you took what someone said, didn't like it, did your own thing, and you still found friends. And I like too how you were mentioning you found friends within your realm. And that's what I
Yeah.
kind of hear about too, where it's like I kind of heard it on like a level of who do you want to date, right? Like if you want to
Mhm.
date someone in particular, you go to the things that they would be at. So like it's the same way as friends. If you want to make friends that are kind of in your like things that you like, your passions, your niches, whatever, then go do those type of things. And in Vegas and New York, like there's so much opportunity out there.
So
It's
much
just
to do.
yeah, I think it's just people have to really dig deep and figure out what they like to do and like where can they find those people. But I
Totally. And I would say one more thing, don't underestimate social media because I know that we could all shit on
yeah,
Instagram. Don't get me wrong, social media sometimes is a shithole, right? Like, I get it. I've been working on social media for 12 years. I've been through a lot of it. But, like, Asha Ayala, for example, I always tell this story, like, I found her on Instagram and I DM'd her and I was like, "Oh my god, I have to be your friend. Can I meet you for coffee next week? Like, we have so much in common." And she was like, "Yeah, okay." And then we met for coffee and I was like, "Hi, I'm gonna be your friend forever. Like, let's talk about it. Let's see what works for you." Like, I just knew. And so I would say like just being open to saying like, "Hey, let's meet for coffee. Like, I love what you're working on," but like really coming from a genuine place, not from someone who's
right.
like trying to get something from someone because I'm sure we've all gotten hit up with like that kind of stuff. But like when it's genuine, and you really are connecting with someone like minded, you can make awesome friends.
Yeah.
And
That's how
also,
I'm sorry, I was gonna
yeah,
say
no,
that's how me and Jess became friends. Shout out to Jess. Hi Jess. That's how we became friends. She like
I love
messaged
that.
me on Instagram when she was coffee blogger and I love coffee shops and we ended up meeting up at a coffee shop and just hanging out and talking and now we've been friends for like 2 years or so. And
I
it's
love
just
that.
through
And I know that you
Instagram.
guys are good friends. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's
I love
amazing.
that. That's a great example. And I would say also when you go, say, like, for example, you go to coffee shops, you really like coffee
Mhm.
shops, sharing that on your social media so that you do share pieces of your, what you like. People could say, "Oh my gosh, I love that coffee shop. Have you checked out this coffee shop? If you ever want to get coffee, like, I'm always down to make a coffee friend." By you sharing who you are, you were able to welcome more in people that are like-minded and vice versa. So, I coming back to New York, it was really funny. It was like I had like 2 friends, and it was like going from Vegas where I knew so many people and I had this awesome community around me to like 2 people, and of course family, but they're upstate, and so I felt kinda like, the new kid on the block, literally, and so the first thing I've been doing, and I've been doing this past year, is just, like, going to shops that I really like and like tagging them on my social media or inviting one of the shop owners on my podcast. Just starting to follow people in New York who are doing cool similar things and like messaging them or shopping local and tagging the brands. The same type of thing I did to build community in Vegas, I've been doing here, but I haven't been putting pressure on myself to show up too much. I've been, like, pacing myself because I wanna make sure I'm grounded. This was a big move on a lot of levels, but already I'm starting to feel like now I go into stores and, like, I know the people and, like, coming on my podcast or going to an event and someone looks familiar, like, that's starting to happen. And so I think again, when you are able to understand what you genuinely like and show up in those spaces a little bit more, or even if you can't show up physically all the time, just online, you definitely can build relationships that way.
That's really good advice. I like that a lot because it's a little bit of work, but coming from you and being someone that had a lot of people in Vegas to someone with no one, basically like 2 people in New York, you're starting to see more of that community growth, which is awesome and
Yeah.
definitely like
Starting over.
yeah, it's definitely really, really cool to see. So
Oh,
thank you
that's
for
awesome.
that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I really hit that reset button. I was like, "Boop, we are starting all the things." So it's been really interesting to relearn that. And like you said, with friends, there's been some big shifts there of people that were good friends of mine, but just wasn't going to be good friends or close friends in the new chapter. And that
Right.
was something that I had to process even today. So this is all stuff very fresh on my mind, but it's all good. Like, I think that's part of growing up and part of life, and you change and you evolve, and who you are at 30 is not who you are at 37, and that's a
Mhm.
good thing. So, again, the more that you could just tune in with yourself and know who you are and own your own shit and own your side of the street, that's the best way of moving forward, regardless of what that looks like.
Right. And so being 37 compared to being 30, you find that you're more yourself than you've ever been before.
1,000 trillion,
Yeah.
bazillion, gazillion percent.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm
Without
so
a shadow
excited.
of a doubt. Without a
Uh,
shadow of a doubt.
I'm
It's
so
so much
excited.
better.
Yeah, because, you know, like I said before, I was so not all there, I guess you can say, when I was younger. Like I was doing stupid stuff. I wasn't like really focused. I was kind of like all over the place. And now I feel like I'm more able to figure out where I want my life to go and like kind of show up more as who I am. Like, an example is when I was like 20, I never wear like glitter on my face or like on my body or anything like that. And now it's like I have little glitter lotion that sometimes I like put on as freckles and I'm like, I'm just going out like this. It's fine. Like,
That's
just kind of
cute.
owning it a little bit more. And so I love that you say that you are definitely more like in your own self at 37 than you've been
I've
then.
never felt more myself than I do even this past month.
Mm,
And it's like every single day I get to meet a new aspect of myself, which is really cool. And also old shit too that I'm like, "You know what? You're not coming on the next chapter." Like this is
yeah.
old stories or old things and like you're done. It's a wrap. You're out.
Mhm.
And that's also really freeing too when you have the awareness to see like what no longer serves you and what you don't want to do anymore and like cleaning up boundaries and like what you allow in and what you allow out like that all you just have more of that confidence of knowing who you are and like what you think and who you really respect if they're all on board like that's all you need to know and that's really cool about getting older.
Yeah, and the thing you mentioned too, which I've also been learning more in therapy, is boundaries.
Oh,
Because
I went to
boundaries
therapy for that too.
yeah, it's so amazing
Yeah.
how, like, it's funny because I feel like a lot of people call it the villain phase, where you're like, I don't give a shit about nothing, or like, where it's like
Mhm.
people are like, if fuck me over, then I'm cutting you out of my life. Or people that are like, for me recently, I ended up befriending people because I felt like the times that I tried being friends with them, it's just not reciprocated. And I didn't want to be the
Yeah.
type of person that like always tried to reach out, always been like, hey, when are you coming over? Hey, or like, when can I see you again next? And like, they just kind of mm, dismissed me. Like I'm talking like people that visit from like out of state, or,
Mm.
visit somewhere else, and they come by and like they completely forget I exist. And I reach out to them like, hey, like you're in Vegas. I like, did you want to hang out? Like those type of people, that I
Yeah.
kind of saw were friends. And I'm like, I'm putting a boundary on that. I'm just kind of stopping that because it's like you're not really a true friend of mine. So it's kind of like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I guess with boundaries, having boundaries with other people, I'm starting to find being more beneficial to my energy and to my
Yeah.
time. Did you see that too? Did you find that you have way
Well,
more time when you set your boundaries?
1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a good analogy, I want to say my therapist told me this, or my sister's therapist told her, but it's like thinking of a ring of a tree, and maybe sometimes people are close to the inner circle of the ring of your tree, but like it's okay to push them out. And, like, you don't necessarily have to cut them fully out, but they just now have a new boundary of where they are in your life. And maybe people who are on the more outside, maybe there's times where you bring them more in. So, I think that, it could ebb and flow, and that's okay, that's life. And there's some people who I had to cut out because they were just too toxic, and I literally don't have time for that. And then some people I just had to shift and adjust, and that's cool too. I've had both.
That's an amazing analogy. I like it. I have to remember that. But now I wanted to ask you, we have about 10 minutes left. I
Yes, I saw
wanted
that
to
pop up.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you could see it. I wasn't sure if you
Yeah.
could. Um, so my last question for you is, what advice would you give someone who is just about to turn 30 about being 30, if that makes sense?
Yes,
Like,
I would
yeah.
say embrace it. This is a really cool year for you to just be more of you, and the parts of you that felt like maybe you were quote unquote too much or too weird or too awkward or whatever that old story was because you didn't fit in the quote unquote box, embrace those parts. Embrace them with your heart and your spirit and with love and gratitude because those are the things that will help you move forward in life.
I
That's
love
it.
that. Embrace your authentic self. That should be the title of the podcast episode. Embracing your
Yeah.
authentic self, because that's what I feel like a lot of people are doing at 30. And like,
Yeah.
that TikTok sound where it's like the girls in their 30s is like a whole
Yes.
other like I don't know the exact phrase of it,
I
but
know
it's so
exactly what
funny.
you're talking about.
Yeah, because it's true. Because it's like the girls and it's like the girls in this generation of their 30s, like, hot damn or something. I don't know, it's
Mhm.
something along those lines,
Yeah.
just really funny, but it's true because 30s, you are becoming your more authentic self, and I love
And
your
you know more
example.
of yourself.
Yeah.
That's,
Mhm.
I think, the big part, like, it takes time to learn who you are. I
Right.
remember putting such pressure on myself that I had to be my full self, but I had to learn who that was, and I'm
Mhm.
always learning, and you will always be learning, but I would say use your 20s to, like, explore, experiment, test, see, and then 30s, really embrace the parts you wanna bring with you, and be open and curious and seeing where that evolves and loving on yourself because that is the most sustainable way of moving forward too.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I loved everything that you said and all your
Oh,
advice and everything. I'm just so happy you were able to come on the podcast today.
I'm so glad this worked out and thank you for asking these questions. It's so cool that this was a conversation. I didn't even realize exactly what we were gonna be talking about, and I'm so glad this is what we were talking about because it is so important, and thank you for holding this space to have these conversations, and I hope that anything that was shared today touches someone that needed to hear, and, I'm just proud of whoever's listening, like, you're doing awesome, and I'm here to encourage you and all that good stuff, so thanks again for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Hey friends, thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment to follow and review this podcast so it could reach others. Also, if you leave a review, I'll be sharing your review in the next episode. Lastly, if you want to be part of this growing podcast to chat about your life, your profession, passions, or if you have advice that you wish you had at 30, please sign up at the link provided in the show notes. I would love to have you as a guest on the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.